Bonjour and welcome to the Rainy Corner. My name is Donna Bravo and today we will be talking about villains. Now my last video was a little long, so today's video I'm gonna try to make it a little shorter. But if it's not, bear with me. I'm just getting started. So first of all, what is a villain? A villain is someone who, for reasons they believe are justified, tries to do something that is in fact reprehensible. Now, are villains and antagonists the same thing? In short answer, no. They can be, but by definition, they're not. An antagonist is someone who is against the protagonist, whereas villain is just someone who is against the hero. Protagonist just means the main character, the person we're following in the story. Antagonist simply means the person that goes against the main character. The villain could be the antagonist, but we could also be following their story, and therefore they could be the protagonist. It really depends on the story. To the reader's eyes, the villain's main purpose in the story is to screw with the protagonist's life. In most cases, the villain specifically has it out for your protagonist. However, there are some cases where the villain doesn't even know of your protagonist's existence, and the protagonist just keeps getting in the way. Antagonists are the protagonist of their own story. I'm sure you've heard that somewhere. You're the protagonist of your life. I'm the protagonist of my life. The same applies to every character in your story, and your villain happens to be a character. The villain believes completely in what they're doing. They believe what they're doing is right, it benefits them or it benefits their nation or something, and they truly believe it's worth fighting for. Something I find really helpful when I'm developing the villain of my book is that I think of the villain as the protagonist, except from their point of view and their life. This is really helpful because you get to know the villain at a deeper level. You give them as much attention and care as you would the protagonist, which is a good idea. Remember, villain or antagonist is what defines your protagonist. If the villain is easy to beat, your protagonist isn't really gonna care, and we're really not gonna see them develop as a person. Give the villain layers, and your protagonist will have layers too. Now, I'm not saying the protagonist is just gonna write themselves, but if you give your villain layers, if you really get to know them at that deeper level, then your protagonist is gonna have to work harder and smarter to beat them. People love villains. I love villains. In the end, I'm always rooting for the protagonist of the story, but deep down, something in me always compels me to love the villain. I'm sure everyone's loved at least one villain in their life. Now, why do people love villains? One, they're flawed. We, as decent people, are flawed. They, as garbage humans, are flawed. The hero is not flawed. Therefore, they are not human. People like to relate, and the perfect person is not relatable. Number 2, they're complicated. People are a mess of emotions, and we like to see ourselves reflected onto the lives of our characters. And the villain is probably the only other nervous wreck in the story. A hero who is not afraid of that spider in the corner just waiting until you let your guard down is not a person. Number 3, they're strong and determined. Villains don't let anything get in their way. Qualities a lot of people wish they had, even though their determination is what ultimately leads them to go down the immoral path. These villains demand respect and fear, and always make it a point to show that they are not to be messed with. So let's get on with it. How do you make a believable villain? Number 1, common sense. Of course, you guys saw it coming, I saw it coming. Those Disney screenwriters saw it coming, so why not? This villain is smart enough to manipulate the entire world into doing their bidding and bending at their will, but they fall for the lamest trick in the book. The protagonist is tied up. They can literally go nowhere. And then from just asking questions, the villain is like, oh, this person is tied. Of course, they can't do anything to me now because I'm so amazing. So let me just tell my evil plans to the only person in the universe that can stop me. No one's gonna buy that. Someone had to say it. A real life person with half a brain knows not to tell their plan to the only person that can stop them. Besides, if the hero is tied up, a good villain will just straight out kill them or do whatever it is your villain wants to do with the hero. Number 2, power. Your villain needs to have power influence. Extra points if they're a spoiled rat. If you look at history, a lot of people who have done bad things were often really rich or just had a lot of power. If they aren't rich, then what kind of power and influence do they hold? Do they have a way with words? Are they a hot sauce seducing machine? Are they really smart? Remember, they need to be a threat to your protagonist. No one is gonna believe a 5-year-old hacked into the school system to give everyone but themselves a failing grade if the 5-year-old can't even spell their name. It would make a great plot twister, but it's not incredibly believable unless you have some amazing backstory or extensive research to back it up. Number 3, backstory. What went wrong with your villain? No one is born evil, so you need to identify what the hell went wrong so that this good person turns out the way they are. Number 4, dialogue. No cliches. Nothing the parents of a 3-year-old kid would think okay to choose to watch as a family movie. And absolutely nothing that can be followed by some good old lightning and some nice ominous rain in the background. You wanna know what you could do instead? You could punch the protagonist with words. It's possible. Make the dialogue hurt. Don't be afraid to hurt your protagonist's feelings. In fact, make the protagonist feel as bad as they can. Make the protagonist question themselves and what they've done, why they've done what they've done, and make the villain look powerful, like they're in control. Because let's be honest, they kind of are. So we went over how to make a believable villain. Now let's go over how to make an unforgettable villain. The list of how to make an unforgettable villain includes all of the things I just listed, plus the ones I am about to list right now. Number 1, worthy rival. Make your villain strong. Make them stronger than the protagonist. Trust me, it will make the story a lot more interesting if the stakes and the odds are stacked against your protagonist. And they have to work their way to become a better person and to get stronger in order to overcome those challenges and fears and ultimately defeat the villain. The villain needs to push the protagonist. If the protagonist is able to beat the villain, if the protagonist does not get frustrated, and if your protagonist does not feel pushed, then you need to revise your planning. Number 2, villains are human. Unless they're an alien, in which case the advice still applies because if they kill you, it's probably for self-preservation. You would do the same thing. Trust me. The villain is a character. More specifically, they are your character, so treat them like one. Create a character profile for them and just remember, you created that trash piece of human. It's your baby. Feel proud when they're out destroying the world and screwing with your protagonist's life. Humans have strengths, weaknesses, and feelings. And guess what? Your villain is a trash human, but human they are. Get to know their backstory. Their backstory, most often than not, affects them in some way. You don't necessarily need to include their backstory within your book. Most authors don't like to because most often than not, it's completely useless, but not irrelevant. So you, as the author and creator of that trash human being, need to know it. What went wrong? Remember, they are like the protagonist. They also have desires and destinations. But unlike the protagonist, the villain will stop at nothing to achieve their goals. They don't care if they have to slaughter an entire village. They don't care if they have to kill or hurt whoever they need to kill or hurt. Number 3, motivations. They were born evil, formed from the blazing infernos of hell and the ingredients of discord, bringing with them the wrath of tormented winds of whispers gone unheard. I'm not gonna buy that. Yes, we've all heard of the serial killers who have killed and raped with a cold heart. But that was because there was something wrong with their brain. Unless your villain is a serial killer or something is wrong with their brain, I'm not gonna buy it. Even if they are evil, which they are, they still need a motivation for being evil. If you have no idea what to do, research history. Dictators, monarchs, serial killers, etc. There are plenty of horrid events and people to learn from. Trust me. I'm a history nerd. Use my example from the last video about Bloody Mary, aka Mary the First. So that is it for today. Personally, I love villains, even though I know I shouldn't. There's a link to my social media accounts down in the description below. Subscribe and like. Hope everyone has a nice day or night. It really depends, and I'll see you all in the next video.